Welcome back to Prepare to Read, where myself, Marcos, and my good friend Jacob guide each other on our first read-throughs of our favorite book series. Currently, we are reading Brandon Sanderson's Way of King, where Jacob is a first-time reader, and this week we are diving deep into chapters 29 through 32. But first, thanks to all of our new subscribers, and our Discord server is finally up and running as it should. So if you'd like to join our Discord server, the link is on our channel page, and it's also in the description below.
Yeah, big. We had a big influx of subscribers. How close are we to our new goal, Marcos?
Right now, as of the recording of the video, we're at 68. So we're getting close to 75. Hopefully this video can get us there.
Maybe. I believe. I believe it can do it. How have you
but
been,
if you don't
sir?
care to subscribe, we're also good with just commenting questions you have, things you like, things you dislike. Anything to support is appreciated. But as far as how I am doing, I'm doing pretty good. Things are a bit busy, especially getting closer to the end of the year.
Oh.
But I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good too. Work's fine. Work's always just fine. It's work. But I will say, I did want to talk a little bit. I started a new show, and Marcos, I used to watch shows a lot, and I've been falling off. I don't watch too many anymore. But I started Yellow Jackets on Paramount Plus, and I'm really into it.
Oh, yeah.
I've binged most of that. I'm about to finish season 1.
I saw it recommended, but I haven't seen that one.
I think you would like it. It's like the CW shows back in the day, like Arrow and Riverdale.
Yep.
It's like that, but just enough better to where it's like a good show. It still has it gives me very teenager vibes, you know what I mean? But still, I really enjoy it. So I recommend it. It's spooky, great for the Halloween season, but not overtly scary either. So I've been enjoying it, man.
Cool. Maybe I'll check it out.
Maybe you should. And then as far as other stuff too, I think you've been reading a book and I've been reading a book too. You want to tell us about what you've been reading outside of our Way of Kings?
Yeah, so I just finished reading book 1 of the First Law series, which is The Blade Itself. And it was great. Super awesome book if you're looking for a character-forward fantasy series. So recommend it for sure. So we might talk about it at some point on the channel. So
maybe 7 years after we've done Stormlight Archives, we can start our new series. I've been reading The Secret Life of Addie LaRue, as I believe how you say it. I think it's been a great contrast between Stormlight Archives and this, just for the straight up fact of it's very simple, very straightforward. And then I think the biggest thing I noticed too is the text difference, or the prose difference between Sanderson, and I forget the name of the author for the other book, is different. She's a lot more abstract, I feel very flowery, whereas Sanderson, I've really come to appreciate Sanderson's style of this is what it is, there's he'll be descriptive, but it's not it's not very literary, if that makes sense. You get a clear picture of what's going on always. So I like it, but then it is a breath of fresh air to go somewhere else where you can just completely see the difference in how things are being described. So
yeah,
he reminds me a lot of Frank Herbert with Dune, where I felt like Dune was the same way, where it's very utilitarian, I guess you could say, where it's just hey, this is what's this is literally what you're seeing, and that's what you get, and that's how you move forward.
Yeah, well, you ready to jump into the chapters for this week?
Absolutely, sir.
All right, so starting with chapter 29, Arrogance, and we are finally back with Shallan. It's been a while since we have gotten anything from her, and this is kicking off part 3, where we'll have point of views from Shallan and also from Kaladin. So we're in Kharbranth, and Shallan is having a span-read conversation with her family back in Jocheved. And during this time, the family members are wondering, how much longer is this going to take? She was supposed to come, she was supposed to steal this Fabrio from Yassa and go back because the family is falling apart. And they're worried about that. How long is this going to take? And also, how is she doing? But Shallan's starting to kind of reflect and thinking, man, I'm really enjoying this time with Yasna. Am I going to be able to do this? and she's really conflicted. They also...
I'm going to jump in here. I think this is, just to start this off, I feel like I'm going to be a broken record during this recording. She is such a conflicted character in multiple ways. Like, her goal of getting this soulcaster or fabrial, whatever you call it, versus, I actually really enjoy being a ward under her. And then also later on we'll see I really like Yasna and how she encourages me to be a free thinker. However, some of her beliefs on like religion in this world make her feel very strongly about it too. So I loved coming back into Shallan, and you see it, like, he starts with it right off the bat. Like, how are you doing? I'm doing really great, actually, and you guys aren't, but I won't tell you that.
Yeah, because Shallan I believe she has an opposing religious view to Yasna. Like, they are literal opposites. Yasna is basically like an atheist, and Shallan is like a believer in something.
Definitely. Actually, since you brought it up, I was going to bring that up, but I don't understand. I don't know how one could be an atheist in this world. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, there is so much going on that how she describes it, like some unknown being existing. It's not the craziest thing that happens here. You know what I mean? Like, you have little things that appear out of nowhere based on random stuff, and like, it's too far-fetched to believe that someone had a hand in the world. You know what I mean?
Maybe a better description is not that Yasna's an atheist. I think she just breaks out of kind of the conventional religious views.
Well, she calls herself an atheist, which maybe, hey, it's a different world, the definition's a little different. I understand her, like, I'm not saying I think it's stupid or anything. I understand she doesn't like the religion. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you have these ardents who are telling you what is true and what is not, how to live your life, and what's good and right. Like, we see that conversation later. I think it's so much more of just like the chance that there is a higher being just doesn't sound too crazy in this world, Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I find it a little funny.
Yeah. Well, adding a little more to Shallan's conflictedness, she also finds out from her family that Luesh has died, and Luesh was pretty much a part of their whole plan, where he was the one that knew how to work the fabrial. So with Luesh dying, that's kind of a big deal, and it feeds into her conflictedness, because she even said, she's like, well, if he's dead, somebody needs to know how to use it, so maybe I should stick around a bit more. But she's also kind of on a timeline, because her family's telling her that now some mysterious men are starting to come around, and they're demanding the Soulcaster back. So there is a sense of urgency of, what do I do?
Yeah, and I have a lot to say about this this section that we get. I think it's some of the most important information that we get in this chapter, because, her family back home, her brother, Nan-Balat, is writing through his fiancée, I guess, his betrothed. I don't know if she's actually the queen or not, or whatever.
She's the betrothed.
Yeah. To say, like, hey, like, these people are here. He thinks that their father had plans with these people to become a high prince. And he was like, hey, I asked them to support me, and they just laughed at it. And then we find out that there's like a secret society. Well, at least what I'm thinking is a secret society with the 3 diamonds in a strange pattern. And we see that Luesh had the pendant, and the people who came had, like, I think he had a dot or that symbol on his thumb.
Yeah.
I don't think that what her brother says about, hey, I think they were supporting our father is true. I think their father was more of like a vessel with this society, where it's like, hey, we are going to move through you, your steward, because like we learned that stewards are the ones that read and write, right? That's how that works. So like, was the king, or not king, was their father even aware of what was happening? You know what I mean? Was he like the steward, an in-between? Yeah, so when he says like, "Oh, I think they backed my father," I don't think that's how it was. I think it was like, "Hey, we're gonna let you reap the benefits of what this gets you, but also you're going to be a pawn in our plans, and you're gonna do what we tell you to do." And now that like you serve no purpose, we need that soulcaster back, and you better give it to us, or else stuff is gonna happen. And that also brings me to the next point I want to say on these people is, we just learned of another group that is doing shady things politically and like hardcore, where they're like going to straight up kill people. And that's the people that now own Seth. And I'm like, we just learned about that. And then we learned about this right on. Like, are these people connected? And I have to feel like yes, right? Like, I think it'd be pretty crazy if we have multiple secret societies moving around here. I went back to the previous chapter with Seth and tried to find if we had, any signs of like the 3 diamond pattern going on, and we don't. But
yeah,
I don't know, man.
Mysterious.
It is. I feel like they're the same people. I think it's the same people going on. We know that they wanted Seth to kill multiple high princes. So, like, it would make sense if, hey, it looks like they were trying to move up Shallan's father to a high prince. Well, to do that, someone's got to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I think that was a very important facet right there.
Yeah. And also with Shallan, here's where we start to get a bit more of the dynamic between Jasnah and Shallan. Like Jasnah pushing her thinking and the question she's asking, and Shallan kind of being challenged by that. And Jasnah ordered Shallan to study the death of Gavilar. And she's getting annoyed kind of by this writing style of the historians. And I think right here is where she brings up the whole that there were like footnotes that were written by the women that are writing these books. But it's always kept a secret, like an unspoken secret from the men. So they're able to like have a much more in-depth, realistic form of communication. And I thought that was really cool. That's pretty interesting to think, man, this whole society has this secret like writing and nobody knows except for those that can read.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool world building.
It makes you think like how much because like, okay, I think the women in this world play an important role because they like are the only ones that can read, or typically are the only ones that can read and write. So like, how much information did King Gavilar not know? Or how much does Dalinar not know? Like the Way of Kings, the book that they're reading, like how much is in footnotes that like maybe isn't being told?
And the vibe I got is it seems like it's usually extra notes added to kind of not hurt the feelings of the men. Like, where they'll say, oh, this guy went and he defeated 15 people in battle. And then the footnote would be like, well, actually, he defeated like 3 and the other people defeated the rest.
Yeah.
Like, it's like clarifying stuff that protects their honor or keeps
reputation
from embarrassing them. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think even the one with King Gavilar, it was like, yeah, we bumped up his reputation or his vocabulary a little bit, It needed to sound a little more scholarly, or, they made it sound like he was the one that realized the Parshmen were important when really like, but then it does say like, hey, he wasn't an anthropologist. Like he was there to do what he was doing, like it's not his fault. That's just
it's interesting to think about because I'm pretty sure that's happened in our own history.
Oh, definitely.
People are hyped up and yeah. It's not really the truth. Especially
when it was like you could tell someone, hey, either you write that I was a badass or I'm going to kill you. Like that those were your options. So that is a good note.
And they're discussing this death of Gavilar, and Shallan again is being kind of witty, and Jasnah is like, hey, you should meet Wit. So Wit came up in this chapter.
Yeah, somehow. Wink, wink. She tells her straight up, she's like, I want to bring you to court. She's like, I think you having that cleverness is what she desires. I actually have a quote underlined here that says, Jasnah encouraged her to speak her mind, something Shallan had taken to gladly. And she really encourages her to like, hey, you've been told this is not good, but that's wrong. Like, You need to. But then she kind of goes on to say, like, hey, but like cleverness without intent is just cleverness, and she kind of relates it back to that movement of writing where she was talking about where people take really hard stances and it seems like what's the point? I don't know. I really like their interactions here. Marcos, you know how I feel about school, but I was kind of like, man, like I wish school was like this, like a little bit more like this, where you have that one person that's like teaching you and feeding you knowledge and stuff. Yeah, it's okay.
That's what a PhD is.
I'll pass.
It
I've
does remind
heard
me
too much
of
of
a
your horror
PhD
stories.
process of like, hey, you have like an independent study. You're learning because you are going to be an expert at these topics. You're not just learning a bunch of useless info.
Yeah, and she's not teaching her. It's like she says like, hey, yes, these things that we're studying are important, but Yasna always comes back to like, this is what it means to be a scholar. Like, this is what you need to look at. This is what you need to question. So she digs more to the fundamentals of, hey, this is how you study and this is how you criticize stuff. Not so much of like, oh yeah, I need you to find that one answer. Because I think we know Yasna's probably read a lot of this stuff and already got what she wants to get out of it. It's just more of, can I teach her how to do it too?
Mm-hmm. And from this conversation, it pretty much closes out that they're discussing the murder. They're trying to understand why it happened. But the motive behind it is still kind of the big question to answer. Yeah,
and then we get this awesome, like, let me see if I can find it. I don't think I underlined it. But she straight up, like, she asks Shallan, like, hey, what do you think? And Shallan's like, why do I have a position to say anything? Like, I don't know anything. And I think we get this really good lesson where Yasna's like, well, what's the point of reading this stuff if you're not going to interpret? Like, books can hold knowledge. Like, if that's what I wanted you to do, like, I would just make you a book, basically.
Oh, yeah. She says, like, the point of information is interpretation.
Yeah.
If you were just reading for information, I could just leave the information in the books.
Yeah.
There's no need for it to come out.
And I loved that. I love that because I think of, I'm pretty sure you can relate to this a lot, but even like with conversations with people like at work with leadership, and I tell people like, hey, what do you think he meant by that? And some people are like it's not my job to think about that. And I feel like, why not? Like, why isn't it? Shouldn't you be reading between the lines? Like, what are you, just like some robot that's gonna go out and like you don't question anything? So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because I thought, dude, I read that line and I was like, damn, like that. Yeah, that's real.
I've told you, I think Sanderson is really good at kind of the philosophical ideas, whereas other authors, I think, wouldn't pull it off as well as him. But that's one of the strengths of this book, just leadership, approaches to scholarship. It's all done really well, where you're like, dang, that's good. So, no, yeah. I love it. That line stood out to me also.
Yeah, and then I have another one, same conversation, where, again, Shallan's being witty, which I gotta say, you know what? I was really hard on her for not being funny. And I still don't necessarily know that she's funny, but I think Shallan has great attitude. It reminds me of, like, Ellie attitude a little bit. I think Ellie was funnier. But same thing, where it's like, man, she's kind of not the nicest person. But it's in a good way. But then Yasna tells her, never apologize for being clever. It sets a bad precedent. However, one must apply one's wit with care. You often seem to say the first passably clever thing that enters your mind, which is what I was talking about earlier. I don't know. This whole conversation, I was like, it's so good. Their interactions, the lessons that Yasna's trying to teach her. And like we see Shallan like battling with this stuff where, hey, this is what I grew up with learning. And she's like, is that right? And, she's just questioning what she's been taught and how she feels. So I enjoyed all of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to them, but so their discussion is brought to an end when King Taravangian enters. And he comes in and he asks about Yasna's Soulcaster, which obviously is kind of a interesting topic for Shallan, considering she wants to steal it. And during their conversation, Taravangian also hints that there are some dark activities that he's possibly partaking in.
Whoa,
and,
what?
That's what the summary says. I don't remember exactly. And from there, Yasna is kind of evasive to the conversation. I'm not sure if this ties into a future chapter. I don't think we're covering in this episode, but where Yasna's kind of like, I need to take care of some things for him.
Well,
anyways.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know how I like that summary. But
yeah.
I think what it talks about is like, at least what I could think of that's, that he's doing dark things is Yasna straight up says like, hey, I know what you being a partner with me or like supporting me right now like means. And we get a very clear picture that's not a good thing, that it's going to take a hit on him.
There's consequences.
Yeah, definitely consequences. So like that's what I get a hint of like, oh man, it's really interesting. But yeah, other than that, I don't know if I get
Well, there is kind of a shroud around Taravangian. He's interesting. Things aren't as straight up in your face, because he says here, oh, the reason why I came was just to have Shallan draw me. And it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that's the reason why you're here.
He really came to ask about where she got the Soulcaster. Like 100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly why he was there. And I actually wanted to talk about that. So he asked her about the Soulcaster and how she got it. And in the same chapter, we just got information that we think Shallan's father, or I guess Ward, father, got it from this weird trio of diamond society that's happening. I really don't think that that's a coincidence that we learn about that, and then Yasna gets questioned about hers. Like, I think a lot about why, any author puts things where they put them, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And is she involved with them? I don't think so. Maybe she used them to her advantage. Like, it's known that nobody likes her of the typical society, and she had to have done something that was notable enough to get that response from everybody, other than just denouncing the religion.
Yeah, well, while this is all going on, these conversations, Shallan starts to draw Taravangian. And she ends up getting shaken when she accidentally draws two somethings.
Can I read the description?
In the image? Yeah, go for it.
Two tall and willowy creatures with cloaks that split down the front and hung at the sides too stiffly, as if they were made of glass. Above the stiff high collars, where the creatures' heads should be, each had a large floating symbol of twisted design full of impossible angles and geometries. Whoa.
So,
spooky stuff.
I obviously have to ask, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think I texted you as soon as I read this part. Because, we've been talking about that I needed something to, I've been waiting for something to, pull me in. And this is the closest things have gotten. I read this part, and, I was reading, and, I leaned forward. I was locked in. So I think a couple things, right? The first thing I thought of was, whatever. Creepy, right? It was spooky. I really enjoyed that it was spooky. I think it was such a nice... We haven't gotten that, and I think I've been pretty clear about, hey, I love when fantasy books throw just a little bit of that horror or, just scariness into it. It just really hits.
That is really scary. Imagine drawing a picture and being like, oh my gosh, I just drew this, creature or whatever standing behind somebody. That is weird. That is very creepy.
We know how she works, right? I underlined her ability, which is capitalized just like the thrill, and just like lashing, memory. So we know how her photographic memory works. So we know that those were there. She saw them. They were in the image when she looked. Now my question is are they there to where everybody can see them, or she can only see them through her drawings? You get me? In her memory, she's seen... this is a fucking fantasy world, right? And it's pretty crazy. She can see behind layers. Because, we know Spren are always there. It's just if they decide to show themselves or not, right? So, if it's like Spren, where hey, they've been there. I think maybe they're attached to the king in some way or something, like, and she's just able to see them when she draws it out. That's what I think is going on, right? Like, because she looks up and they're not there anymore.
No comment, but it's a scene to remember. That's all I'll say.
Definitely. I mean, I underlined it. It's in my annotations. I also think like we get a line a little bit later where Jasnah is they're talking about the king, and Jasnah goes like, he seems haunted by something lately. I don't know if it's haunted by that. And then I also think, right, like, and then I thought, what are they? At first, my first thought went to Voidbringers. But then I'm like, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think, let's see, what did I write here? Why were they there? Right? I think, and then I think back. What did we learn about in the interlude? And again, very intentional about what he puts, like the order in which he gives us information. We spent a whole interlude chapter on learning that someone studies Spren. Okay? And like, what do we know? It's like everywhere, Spren. Like, is this a type of Spren? That's where I'm leaning right now. Yeah, I think they're creepy. But then, like, okay, if Spren are always attached to some sort of something. Like, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason right now that I can think of. So, like,
yeah,
what would their reason be to be there? Like, is it something with the king? And then I went back because, like, okay, you can usually tie them to, like, an emotion. I don't think anybody was feeling a really strong emotion at that time. So I couldn't, like, like, I couldn't point to anything there as far as like, oh, well, like maybe the king was being very like rude or something, or maybe, I don't know. Like I couldn't come up with anything. So I don't know. It's interesting. I have spent a lot of time this week thinking about what those things were. Mm-hmm. I have to ask you, change the topic a little bit. What did you think about their talk about beliefs and her, talking about her atheism and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Did it elicit any feelings from you?
I'm guessing you're asking just because of my background.
Yeah.
And I find it very intriguing. I think it's very respectable for Jasnah to be somebody who doesn't believe the same thing as Shallan, but is still open-minded enough to converse about it, to bring up her own thoughts about it. You can tell Jasnah is an educated, intelligent thinker. She is not just going to be like, that's stupid, man. Like, I'm not going to talk about it. I think she is wise enough to be able to find value even in something she doesn't believe in. And yeah, I really like Jasnah's approach to that stuff. And also I like Shallan's approach to it, where like they're both kind of on the same page if they can talk about it. And Shallan, later on, she voices things when it's like, I don't agree with this. This is against what I believe. And it's almost like they're both challenging each other in different ways.
Yeah, I think I underlined some of Shallan's like inner thoughts where she's listening to Jasnah talk, and she's like, what she was saying made her feel hollow inside. Mm-hmm. And I was like, damn, man, that's like I think, in my opinion, what I took away from that was that Shallan doesn't believe these things because she was like raised to believe them. I think she truly believes them. So now when Jasnah like questions her, and I think sometimes like later on too, she makes Shallan think about it. Like it is like maybe that doesn't check out. And I think it like hurts her like on a deep level of like, damn, like I don't think she said it yet. But I think the seeds are being sown of like, have I been being lied to? So I just enjoyed this. Everything that's going on with these two, I've enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let's move on. We have a couple more chapters to cover, so we'll come back to them in a future chapter, I believe, in this episode. So chapter 30 is Darkness Unseen. And we're back with Kaladin and Gas. And one thing to comment on before we get into the chapter is we also have a new set of little introductions Now we're not getting the death rattles. Now we're getting, and what was the one in the last one? The letters.
Yeah.
We're not getting the letters.
The
now
letter.
it seems like we're getting
Letter.
excerpts from different books.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. It seems in line with kind of Shallan coming back up.
I think if I haven't, I don't want to give it to, so I think I'm going to talk about these when we finish part 3, kind of do what I did, with part 2, and then,
Sum them up.
absorb them in and then see what I think about them. But my first takeaway, and I'll stop here, is I think it's Yasna's footnotes on what she's studying about the past so far, because we know she's trying to figure out what's really going on, and she has the understanding that Dalinar does, that hey, things in the past matter more right now than they used to, and we got to find out why. So we can see it keeps going further back, and she's like, "Oh, I found this thing here." I think it's her. I think it's her notes. But yeah, I'll leave it at that, because are we ever really gonna know? I don't think so.
Nice. Okay, so getting into the chapter, I think this chapter is pretty simple. It could kind of be summed up in 2 parts. The first one is with Gaz and his conversation, where pretty much he is admitting, look, Kaladin's a problem. His initiative is not welcome. And he must die, because bridge runners, their job is to die. They are bait. And that is all their purpose is. That's pretty much the conversation summed up with Gaz.
Yeah, I have thoughts there. So
Go for it.
right, I put, hey, bridgemen are bait. And we talked about this a little bit on the phone. I don't know how I feel about this. It's something that takes me out of the world that Sanderson's built, because I'm not a military guy, right? I don't know anything about the military. But they make it sound like, hey, the bridgemen are just there to go die. But they're not. They literally can't get to the gemstones if the bridgemen don't put the bridge. He's not Sadeas isn't like Dalinar and Adolin, where he can go hop over and do his thing. He doesn't do that. So for them to, oh yeah, they just die. No, they don't. They actually do not do that. So it's just I feel like it's very conflicting with the way they actually do the battle, and what they're telling me just doesn't line up to me. You're basically wasting a resource, and if you don't care about how they do, where they don't give them armor and stuff, you're only hurting your chances to do what you want to do. And I don't get it. I literally put, I just don't understand what statement is trying to be made here. And I don't think it's necessarily oh, Brandon Sanderson's writing and he fucked up or anything like that. That just doesn't make sense to me. If the Alethi are supposed to be this military powerhouse, why are they okay with military inadequacies like that? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I really didn't like that, I guess you could say, where it doesn't add up to me. And then of course we'll see later in the chapters that we read how that amplifies. So you can.
I think I don't entirely agree. I think it's fine. I think it makes sense. I think what could make it stronger and maybe more believable, granted what your argument was maybe if he had done a bit more building at the scale of the military, to where you can believe okay, these bridge runners really not on the radar for Sadeas. It is not going to face him. But you did make a good argument of these guys literally can't cross without them. Sadeas is standing there waiting for them to put these bridges down. He would be observing what is going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he still has a chance to redeem your thoughts, because we've only gotten a little bit of Gaz's opinion and Kaladin's point of view. We haven't really seen further conversation regarding what happened.
Yeah, and I think this is where, again, I think my overall one complaint about Way of Kings so far is the withholding of information. If there's something that would make me change my mind on this, I don't know it right now. So I just see it and I'm it doesn't make sense to me. Oh, look, the bridge crew, they're just there to die.
I don't think he's withholding information here. I just think the information that Kaladin knows, and the information that Gaz knows. You don't know what Sadeas knows yet. You don't know if maybe he is thinking about this. Maybe he did see it. So yeah, I don't think he's withholding. I think he's just staying true to what would the characters know right now.
Yeah, I that's what I'm saying. I don't think I think it's intentional, but like with that choice, I think it would help me a lot to understand like maybe Sadeas just doesn't care and is out there trying to prove a point. I think that's dumb, you know, but like at least right here, it's just like I can't connect the dots there. Like if your goal is to get the gem hearts and you don't care if your bridges get to there to get the gem hearts, like something doesn't line up. You get me? And to me, it's just kind of like it takes me out. And I think that is just a genuine complaint is like that. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. Like I am being very analytical. I think if maybe I was just reading it through, it wouldn't bother me that much. But when I do
honestly, it's kind of all right you're thinking this because you're thinking the same things Kaladin's thinking. Kaladin is thinking exactly what you're thinking. Why is this not being done? It's better. And yeah, so you're thinking in line with what I think you should be thinking.
Yeah. I am Kaladin.
Yeah, you're Kaladin. So you pretty much touched on it, but we didn't really mention it. It's just then we get the whole thing with Kaladin. He is talking about this whole idea of what if we carry the bridge on its side? We can use the thick wood as a shield. And Gaz sees this because Kaladin brings it up to him as kind of like this is my out. I'm going to let them do it because they're going to get killed. And when they get killed, I'm finally free of him.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, I would say, almost connected to the next chapters of Kaladin. Does the next chapter go directly continue from here?
Yeah, I have two thoughts real quick. One,
go for it.
We do learn a little bit about Gaz. And not that I feel sorry for him, but he doesn't like what he does. You know, he feels dirty about it. Like it reminds me of like, you know, whatever. I was going to say a thought, but I can't think of it anymore. He's doing it because it's better than being a bridgeman, but he also feels like, yeah, this is awful. Like he feels in his soul, I think, that he knows that what he's doing is wrong.
But he also isn't a Kaladin to be like, nah.
No, yeah. He's definitely still.
I'll do that.
He's definitely still a coward, which we see because Kaladin like scares him into like doing what Kaladin wants him to do. But it's just, I think it was a very humanizing touch, even though it's kind of like, oh yeah, who cares, you know? But also, how many of those people in the bridge crews wouldn't trade places with him? You know, I think a lot of them would. And then we also learn that what's his name, Lemire or something like that, the Light Eyes that's in charge of Gaz. Like he's basically middle.
That's also low.
Yeah, we learned that he's like middle management, and Gaz is like they're the worst. Like they're not good enough to like own land and stuff, so they're just like bitter, and they take it out on the only people who are below them times 10. So that was an interesting thought. My second thing, we do. Syl says some stuff that like really rang some bells in my head of like, whoa. Like, let's pause there. So she's talking to Kaladin, and she tells him, hold on, I have it underlined. She goes, I feel more like I'm remembering things I once knew. And we just like, Kaladin's like, yeah. Like he goes off to do other stuff. And it's like, whoa. That's a big.
She's over, you're having a crisis.
Well, that's a big line. Like once new. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, is it memories from your Spren life that you had over here? And then she goes on to say, right? This is what really kicked it. She's like, yes, like how to best get the Ardents there to accidentally drink a mixture that will turn their mouths blue. So like. I don't know, like she hasn't seen Ardents since she's been with Kaladin, so she knows about them. I don't know, like it was just like, whoa, is this stuff from when she was a Spren? Like I don't know how off I am on this, but like, you know, do all Sprens have a memory and they're just incapable of sharing it? Do some of them do? Like the weird special one that we saw in the interlude, like does he have a memory? And like, what does that mean? Like, if Spren have memory and they're always everywhere, like that's a lot to like, that's a lot there. That's a big thing. And I really feel like I put in my notes is the secret to the series hidden in the Spren. I'm all in on Spren right now. I think like they're the secret sauce, man. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
But
no comment. Just keep keep doing what you're doing with Spren. You know, it's good that you're seeing the little breadcrumbs that are being sprinkled, though.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just the nature of us doing this and diving as deep as we do on it. It'll be rewarding when you start to see, wow, all these things are connected, or this is why he was dropping X or Y. So
yeah, I hope Syl doesn't die. I like her.
So before we get back to Kaladin, we have a kind of a little interlude to Kaladin where we get a flashback. And this is chapter 31, Beneath the Skin. And we're with Kaladin and his drunk dad. And kind of a little bit of a shocking scene for Kaladin where he's like, my dad doesn't usually get drunk. You know, this is not him. And I can imagine being a kid and like, if your dad wasn't a drinker and all of a sudden he's drunk, being like, whoa, what is going on for him to have like go to this level?
Times are tough for the Kaladin household.
Yeah. And here we find out a bit more about kind of Kaladin's dad, Lyrin's work and how everybody feels about him. How they see that, like, he goes and looks beneath the skin and that's just, like, dirty. Like, you don't do that. And, yeah, these town people really look down on him. And then we get this scene where they come to steal the spheres because everybody knows, and the new Bright Lord, is it?
Mm-hmm.
He's not making it any easier by pointing out, like, oh, this dude has a bunch of spheres, and I bet you he stole them. So these people all come to steal those spheres from them, and I really like this scene, the way that it was done, where Lyrin is like, he pulls out the spheres and is like, if you want to take them, but, like, remember, I saved your kid. Remember, like, you wouldn't be walking if it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And in the end, they all leave. And I was just like, dang, that's a powerful way to handle that situation.
It was, and it was also like very sad in a way, actually. I think I like this chapter. There's a couple things I want to say about it, but like, I don't necessarily think, I think he hints at it too, Lyrin was that drunk. Like, I think he was just very, very, very sad because he's come to terms with the situation they're in. Like, Roshan literally told everybody, hey, this guy's got all those spheres. Like, why are you paying him? Don't pay him. He doesn't need your money. Like, if he really needs it, he'd be asking you to pay. And they just, like, stop paying him, which is insane. And we get this really, like, I think poignant line, which maybe I don't necessarily believe with completely, like, outside of this world, like, in real life. But, you know, Kaladin's struggling. Like, why do they listen to him? Like, why are they trying to do what he wants? And he goes that they're trying to, like, oh, because he doesn't, like, because the way the Bright Lord treats them, that's why they try to please him, because he is unpleasable. And he says, like, when men perceive the world as being right, we are content, which I guess you can relate to their previous Bright Lord. Like, he let them do what he wanted, so, like, they didn't care. They didn't care about him. And he's like, but if we see a hole, a deficiency, we scramble to fill it. Which I guess is what's happening now. Like, they think, oh, this guy doesn't care about us, so, like, we're going to try to really make him care about us. And I think...
I don't remember the exact words to counter that.
What do you mean?
But, like, because you were saying you don't know how if you entirely agree with what they're saying. And from what you said, I would agree. I don't know if I entirely agree with that. I think I would have to really dive into the exact wording there to kind of see what argument Sanderson was trying to make.
Because it's weird, because it's like, okay, if, like, the quote that he puts out where it's like, oh, if we see a deficiency, we scramble to fill it. I would think that the way I think of that is, hey, we recognize that this guy sucks. How are we going to fix that? You know, instead of just leaning full in on, like, well, if he sucks, I suck too. Like that, you know what I mean? I feel like there's a little bit of, like, I don't know if I agree with what he's throwing out there, but I think the point is that I want to make, the chapter title is Beneath the Skin, and we know that Kaladin's father is a surgeon, but I also think what this chapter is trying to see is that, like, he understands people a lot, like, not only from a medical standpoint, but he knows how people work, and he can understand what this guy's doing to manipulate the people of the town to point the target onto him. And I thought that was very At least that's what I took away from it. Like, very clever of the Beneath the Skin title. It's just, he's capable of really thinking about it. And also, too, I don't know if you want to have anything to add on that. I'll stop before I go on.
No, keep going.
I wanted to talk about this belief that, like, hey, we shouldn't see beneath people's skin, and that's, like, wrong and icky. And I kind of was questioning, like, I wonder where that comes from. Like, is that a Vorin belief, their religion? Is that like a Lethe belief, or is that just like, hey, this is a small podunk town in rural Lethe, you know, and that's not how we do things.
Before thinking about it, kind of in the context of this world, it's something I've talked about with my wife, is surgery. Just the idea of surgery. We see it. Not being a surgeon, obviously, we see it so much differently than surgery probably was viewed back then. You know, it's seen as like this very civilized, sophisticated thing. But when you really look at what it is, or if you were to actually see it being done, it is not comforting. You know, it is horrifying. A very like, whoa, like what? I can imagine the first people who were surgeons, I do not imagine they were looked at well whatsoever. They were probably like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you be doing these things? But at the same time, people grew to respect it because it saved lives. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of showing a little bit of the primitiveness of the world.
Yeah, and that's where I question, like, is it the world, or is it the location, or is it the religion? Like, you know, like, there's some religions out there where they're like... I think
it's the world.
You think so?
Yeah, because the society seems a little too structured for them to not know about surgery.
Well, but then I thought about it, right? Like, if Kaladin wants to become a surgeon, he has to go outside of Alethi to Kharbranth. And where we know, like, the king, at least as, like, in present day, was willing to, like, take in a heretic. So it's like, that's where I was thinking, like, maybe there is some, like, religious undertones here. Because, like, there are religions out there that, like, don't agree with certain medicine practices, you know what I mean? So I don't know what to chalk it up to, but I just thought that was a very interesting comment to make, where a lot, like, this world uses magic, like, you know, there's certain things that they do that, and again, it's not Earth, but that are very more advanced in some ways, and then surgery is, like, looked down upon. So it's just like, hey, is it the region? Like, what is driving this belief? Which was really interesting.
Well, I would compare it to, for all the video game players out there, I'm going to give it a comparison kind of to Fallout, where it's like, okay, in Fallout, nuclear science developed so much that other things did not. And I think that's kind of what you're saying a bit, is this is a world that has magic, that has stormlight, that has all these very advanced things that other things are kind of not as developed, such as medicine or surgery.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think the repulsion towards the surgeons comes from.
Definitely. Like, I'm curious, like, if, I don't know yet, but if there was, like, a healing ability, like, is that as weird as doing surgery? You know what I mean? If someone could lay their hands over someone and be like, all right, he's good. Is that acceptable to them? Or is it going to be, hey, no, that's also wrong? So I don't know. It was just an interesting thought. Definitely.
And it might be, just like you said, it might just be the town. He's from a real small town, because when Kaladin is going and trying to do surgeries on, like, the Bridgemen, there's not that repulsion towards it. It's kind of expected, but also now he's in a military setting.
Yeah.
So
like, their legs
it might just be the
off.
town. Yeah, might just be the town. But okay, so still on Kaladin, but now moving back to Bridge 4, chapter 32, side carry. We are with Kaladin as he's watching Bridge 4 practice this new side carry. And he's noticing that they're improving at it, but there's some flaws to this side carry as far as how easily it could be toppled over, where people can stand. But overall, Bridge 4 is going great. You know, they're practicing, they're learning, and we even get a little snippet of people that are observing Bridge 4 and that are kind of like, dude, that guy, like, what are they doing? Why do they care so much? Which I thought was just kind of a little bit of an interesting side note. Mm-hmm. And from here, there's a new band of recruits that's coming in. So Kaladin leaves Rock in charge, and he goes over to receive these new recruits. And during this time, Gaz is dividing up the men among the different bridge crews, and Kaladin gets none. And he's like, what the heck? Like, you're giving this other bridge a bunch. They have more people than us. Like, why are you not giving me bridgemen? And Gaz, he ends up, like, kind of strong-arming Gaz again. And he's like, fine. You can pick one. And Kaladin ends up finding a new ethnicity, the Hardasian man named Lopin. And Gaz is even like, what in the world? Like, why would you pick this guy? He's like, I think he's described as old and lanky, and he has one arm. And when he brings him back, Bridge 4 is even like, what the heck? Like, you pick this dude?
Yeah.
Like, we have to carry bridges, man.
He also, though, like, it's the dude straight up volunteered. He was like, I think you want to pick me. Like, it wasn't, like, Kaladin was like, I don't think I want to pick you. Like...
Oh, yeah, but Lopin's like, nah. You want me, man.
Yeah.
You want me.
Hey, Gancho.
And, Lopin, I don't know why, but in my head,
He's Mexican?
No, he's Italian.
I was like
Italian, yeah. I don't know. He talks a lot about his cousins. You're going to realize, like, every time he comes up, he's always like, oh, yeah, I have a cousin that this and that, and...
I don't know, man. He reminded me of someone, like, from El Paso or something, like straight up, just like his hey Gancho and the way he was, and he's just like, oh yeah, man, I brought like a bunch of waters. That's all they had. Like I just talked.
He
to
has
him.
A personality. I do like that.
I really enjoyed him,
and he does show right away. And I think even Kaladin's caught off guard because they're called to a plateau assault, and Lopin he tells him like go get water, and I think he was just expecting Lopin to like, oh, I'm just gonna grab what I can. But when they come back, he's like, nah, man, I rigged up this thing.
Yeah, he's got a whole setup.
Yeah, and I think Kaladin's like, wow, the cooler. And I think he realizes, like, dude, this guy's a thinker, and also his personality is really contrasting compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
That are all kind of, like, down.
Yeah, exactly. He can change the mood. He is, like, what I would call... Not to get too deep, but like, in every team, I think there needs to be someone who's like, you could say the glue of the team. And I feel like he could be it, where, hey, maybe he can't contribute to the overall mission, but what he does for the morale and chemistry is way more valuable or just as valuable.
And I do like his whole, cause he has one arm, you'd expect somebody with one arm to be like, oh, what do you want me to do, man? Like, how am I supposed to help you? But he doesn't let that hold him back. Like, yeah, he's like, dude, I brought a cooler, man. I can't carry that much, but I got this cooler, and, like, we're good now.
Yeah.
So
he's cool,
But
man.
from there, they then march out on the plateau, and this is a really cool scene. I love that this happened. I feel like it makes sense, and it shows kind of, like, Sanderson's, I don't know, just awareness of how he's writing this story. Because it could have very easily been, like, oh, Kaladin tried the side carry and it was so good and everybody loves Kaladin now and he's just great. And they didn't do that at all. Kaladin does try this side carry because they're getting like barded. And when they try it, it succeeds. Super successful. All of Bridge 4 goes back to the rocks and they bring Kaladin. They're like, Kaladin, you did it. Like, this is great. And Kaladin's just watching as like, dude, they're getting destroyed out there.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, like they're dropping bridges. And I think it ends up costing them like 200 men or something. It even cost them soldiers. Like soldiers were having to stop and pick up the bridge. And you could tell Kaladin is like, this is terrible. This is not at all good. And the soldiers end up beating him up and taking him into custody. And that's where the chapter ends. But I love that this happened to Kaladin. Not literally, but I think it was a really cool character moment for him.
I think I agree with you where it was like, it worked, like it technically worked. And I don't want to say in every other book, like, oh, it would have stopped there. But like, yeah, you're like, okay, cool. This went exactly as planned. And you're reading it and you're like, oh shit, like cool. Like it's actually going to work for them. And then it doesn't go from like, oh, we just hated that it worked, and we're like the soldiers or Gaz, like, oh, like you disobeyed us. It was like it worked so bad that they put the actual mission in jeopardy. Which again, so really loved that. I think it was such a good such a good way to go about it, you know, where, hey, this thing is supposed to be good, and like, yeah, we're all cheering, and then it's like, oh shit, you know. And then
and it also is layered because it's like Gaz said to try it.
Yeah.
But then also now this affected other bridges. Mm-hmm. And we find out pretty soon, like this goes up to like Sadia's level of like this failed. This is not just like we're going to sweep it under the rug. Like this caused some major issues.
It failed the mission. Like they lost what they were going to do. And who knows, like they were attacking the tower, which we've heard about as like being impenetrable, basically. They always fail. Yeah. But then, okay, so then here's where my complaint comes back up. Where we've seen what happens when the bridge crews don't make it to the bridge. Like how detrimental it is to that assault. So then it's like, okay, I just don't understand they're just there to die. Because we just saw them die. Like, we just saw what happens when they all die. So it's like, okay, they're not just there to die.
Well, some of them can die. Not too many, though, because they still need to get across.
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, again,
I'd say
I would think...
it's been a while, but just stick with it. You know?
No!
But it's valid what you're saying right now. But just keep reading. Just keep reading. Yeah.
Like, is there... The only thing I can think of, right? This is just coming out straight of left field of my brain. Are we sacrificing someone to something? You know, like, is there something in the chasm that's like, hey, like, we're throwing these bodies, and, you know, that's all I can think of right now, that maybe I don't have the understanding yet to, like, get why it's okay that they don't have armor and they're meant to die. But I don't know, like, I need something, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, it just straight up doesn't make sense. And like, I would think personally, right, like, this happens, yes, their assault was ruined and they lost a lot of people, but you would think a military minded person would be like, hey, it was dumb that we did that, like, just one group, because then we put everybody else in jeopardy. But if we all did that, we would have every bridge getting there. And like, that has to be beneficial, right? Like, that has to...
I like your thoughts, but I'm not going to comment anymore on this specific topic. I just think we just got to keep reading.
All right. Well, I'm telling you, Sanderson, if you don't make this worth it for me, I'm stopping this podcast.
But yeah, overall, I was telling Jacob on the phone earlier, really, at this point is where I think the book just starts to roll. Like, the ball is rolling, it's just going to keep going. So,
yeah,
I really like this section.
I can already
the next one.
Feel the pace picking up, which I think is good. I do think, like, I was waiting for, like, a ball to drop moment, like I've been telling you. Maybe we haven't had that for the whole, like, book yet, but I think Kaladin, like, this is Kaladin's book. Like, there's going to be consequences for this that I think set things in motion for the rest of his story, and at least for the book, for sure.
Even Shallan's... Oh, well, never mind. Not yet. In a future episode, we'll talk about that. But.
We definitely haven't read ahead and are going to record tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, no, yeah, like, I think this leads to consequences that are going to be, I would guess, like, the foundation of what Kaladin's story becomes in this series. So I'm excited to see him.
Section.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's getting, like, I feel like the interludes, I really enjoyed the interludes. I'm really enjoying these. I think part 3 is off to a banger, to be honest. So I hope that it keeps it up. I kind of know that it does a little bit, maybe. Maybe I don't. Who knows? But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I got nothing else for this episode.
That's all I got, sir.
All right. Well, if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for all of the support, the subscriptions, join the Discord, everything. We appreciate it all. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Long live Bridge 4.